Good evening, and thank you for being with us this evening for the 6th annual dinner honoring our veterans. I'm Gloria White Gardner, serving as your mistress of ceremonies this evening, and we appreciate your support over the years, these 6 years of this wonderful dinner that has been under the leadership of several directors of the USS Silversides Museum. So we thank them for their support and their dedication to this program and to the dinner. We are going to begin with the posting of the colors.
About face. Half right, face. Forward, mark.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. And as your program shows, posting of the colors was done by the Muskegon High School Red Battalions, United States Army Junior ROTC. And they do a wonderful job.
Yes, they did.
Our welcome will be done by Russell Gallus, Executive Director, USS Silversides Submarine Museum.
Thank you, Gloria. Well, welcome. This is my first opportunity to be at the Honoring Our Veterans Dinner, and what a privilege. What a privilege for me to be here, and just what a great opportunity for this museum to have our veterans here, to have so many of our Muskegon County veterans here, and to be able to honor them. A very special welcome to our active military and to all our veterans present. A very special welcome to Sergeant Major Orville Sidner, retired. Who is the recipient of our Dr. Garrison Award this evening. Finally, a welcome to our guest speaker, Mr. Paul Love, the man in blue, who will be sharing with us a few unwritten chapters of the Tuskegee Airmen. Our mission here at the USS Silversides Submarine Museum contains 3 parts. To remember our important history of preserving freedom and defending liberty in our country and abroad, which includes fighting for people who cannot fight for themselves. To honor our men and women who wear the uniform and have worn the uniform, and who are charged with protecting us and our freedom and liberty. And finally, to educate the public about the importance of our history, of our American history, of preserving and defending liberty and justice for all. And while it's not all perfect history, make no mistake, we must not forget this history, and we will not forget to honor the men and women who participated in this history. For unless we honor and remember our past, what hope do we have for the future? And so this evening, it is this museum's privilege to honor our veterans at this dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. I would like to call to the podium, or he can do it from his seat, whichever he prefers. The invocation, Reverend Clarence Guy.
Shall we bow our heads? Our Father and our God, we come now to say thank you, Lord. We thank you for this day. We thank you for what you've done. We ask now that you will bless this food, that it be used for the nourishment of our bodies. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Guy. You'll notice on your program we have such order going on here. Military people tend to do that, try to stay orderly and timely. I was laughing on the way in. I said to Bernice and Hattie, I said, it's amazing that the men can still wear their uniforms and I can't. I told Bernice, I said I was a size 4. I won't tell you what she said, but needless to say, I'm no longer a size 4. But I was in white all the time because I was a neuropsychiatric nurse stationed at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And so I only had one set of dress blues, and those dress blues were a size 4. So they are in mothballs.
Living healthy is more than just counting carbs and exercising, it's a lifestyle choice. Embrace sound, natural alternatives, cultivate and sustain a better way to healthy living. The Health Hut offers a wide selection of vitamins, minerals, herbs, medicinal mushrooms, women's and men's supplements, as well as a vast array of skincare and beauty products. Their friendly, knowledgeable staff is always on hand to help you choose the products that best suit your individual needs. The Health Hut. We have your good health in mind.
The Village at Park Terrace Senior Living Community, offering beautiful yet affordable 1- and 2-bedroom apartment homes as well as 2-bedroom cottages. Rent includes a wide variety of exceptional services, from daily meals shared in the dining room or delivered to your door, to scheduled activities and social events, to 24-hour emergency on-call service. Their expert, caring staff is there to assist you with all of your retirement needs. The Village at Park Terrace Senior Living Community, where you can enjoy the luxuries and comfort of your own home without the work and worry.
ASAP Auto Sales, located at 2486 South Getty Street in Muskegon, offers a wide selection of reasonably priced used vehicles from cars and trucks to vans, SUVs, and 4-wheel drives. With new selections coming in every day, ASAP's lot is always full, which means whenever you drop in, there's about 100 vehicles to choose from. With a wide selection of vehicles, both domestic and import, they have it all. ASAP Auto Sales, 231-830-9000.
With 4 convenient locations, Jack's Corner Store is one-stop shopping at its best. Tools, fresh meats, produce, chips, snacks, and other grocery items, beer, wine, and liquor, even gas and lottery. That's why Jack's is your corner store and so much more.
Hi, I'm Brenda Harris with Nexus Realty, turning dreams into an address. I support DSETV.
Associate Director, USS Silversides Submarine Museum, will introduce our guest speaker. Yeah.
I was very fortunate a year ago, April, to be in the Kalamazoo area. And I was invited to go down to Kalamazoo to make a presentation to a couple of organizations about the Silversides Submarine Museum. One of the groups which I was able to meet with is a group of model makers. And it was a very great eye-opener for me to meet these men and women who really are into the creation of models, military, non-military, airplane, boats, cars. I learned a lot. The best thing I learned was from a gentleman I met at that table. And that gentleman is Mr. Paul Love. And Paul is here tonight, and what caught my ear when we were talking is he referenced the Tuskegee Airmen. And I was fortunate to work under the guidance of Dr. Robert Garrison at MCC. So I know Dr. Bob. And that really then caught my attention even more. So Paul and I began a conversation. Found out he has self-studied. He has really researched the Tuskegee Airmen. So we invited Paul up here. One thing led to another. The exhibit was in the thinking stages. And before the night is over, or you come back, the exhibit is in the back part of this building, back on that side, excuse me, video, pictures, stories that I think you will find very, very fascinating. Paul hailed from Kalamazoo. He was an electrician with General Motors, and as your program says, he learned in his high school years that the whole concept of the Tuskegee Airmen had been overlooked. He decided to take on a one-man mission and study it, record it. He is here tonight to present to us the background of the Tuskegee Airmen. Paul Love from Kalamazoo. Paul?
Man, it sure is nice to see this big crowd. This is super. Yeah, Frank came down to Kalamazoo and we started talking about things, and I mentioned that my expertise was making models of the accurate planes that they flew. And I have some of them in the back. In the process of finding out about Tuskegee Airmen, I found out about the 761st Tank Battalion, which I didn't know about. But Patton asked for them to come over because they were the best tank battalion that was being trained in the battalion, the tank school here in the United States. And Patton was told, you may not want them because they're colored fellas. He said, I don't care what color they are, can they kill Germans? Send them over, because they were the best. I have a picture, I'll show it later, of one of the guys with a bayonet in one hand and an M1 in the other, standing in front of about 20 or 30 German soldiers with their hands up. I didn't know that picture existed, but in the process of researching, the question, what does this mean? Or what do they mean by that? Or that doesn't sound right, has led me to a lot of other things. The information I'm about to share with you tonight is not in your history books, but it can be verified on the internet. I also speculate and I draw conclusions about meetings and influence that is lost to time. And no, I won't go there. I will tell you when I speculate who were these airmen who now call themselves the Tuskegee Airmen. How did they exist? How did they come to exist? Well, it started back in 1939. 1939 was the year of my birth. So in case anybody wonders, I'm not a Tuskegee Airman. I joined the Detroit chapter. I met a lady who was the wife of a Tuskegee Airman, Claire Chandler, and she made me an honorary Tuskegee Airman. So I carry that mantle very proudly. I got interested in the history of the Tuskegee Airmen when I started research to put on the display in General Motors in Grand Rapids in 2004. I had very little knowledge of the airmen prior to that research. Everybody hear me okay? Okay. 1939, America was not recognizable by today's standard. You know Derek Jeter? He couldn't play baseball. Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, they couldn't play basketball. What about Greg Jennings? He couldn't even play football. 1939. And people of color in some states couldn't vote. But 1939, the world was on the brink of a war. And military leaders anticipated the United States being drawn into the conflict and knowing the importance of the airplane, introduced a program to increase the pool of civilian pilots called the Civilian Pilots Training Program, CPTP. This program would shorten the training time to produce pilots that could be trained to be fighter and bomber pilots. The CPTP was closed to men of color. The 1925 War College Directive on the utilization of manpower was one reason. I have a tape for you to look at.
Uncommonly like white boys. They were nuts about airplanes. With aviation a new miracle, they ate, slept, and dreamt flying. By the mid-20s, a few black civilian pilots had managed to become airborne. But at the same time, the American military was making decisions which were intended to keep black America firmly grounded. Between the wars, secret studies took place in this building that had the effect of creating a total setback for aspiring black airmen, an effective ban of which they knew nothing for years. This is the National Army War College near Washington. Here in 1925, senior Army officers were set the task of working out how to deploy black troops in any future conflict. A year later, they had completed a secret study, the use of Negro manpower in war, probably one of the strangest documents ever to come from the military mind.
The Negro is unmoral. The cranial cavity of the Negro is smaller than the white. He is mentally inferior to the white man. The Negro is profoundly superstitious. The Negro is a rank coward in the dark.
The report came to extraordinary conclusions that while the Negro was to bear his share of any future war, his was so inferior a racial type that he could be trusted with only the simplest of tasks, certainly
That was
not flying.
1939.
People often ask, what is elder law? Elder law is a specialized practice of law that encompasses estate planning, preservation of assets, long-term care planning, Medicaid planning, and veterans benefits. Many estate planning attorneys do not specialize in elder law. If you're seeking help because you or a loved one must reside in an assisted living residence or nursing home, you'll want advice directly from an elder law attorney. Anna Duggins has been a member of the State Bar of Michigan for 16 years and a partner at Parmenter O'Toole. She is extremely empathetic with her clients' situations and provides a holistic approach to solving their problems. Anna Duggins is an elder law attorney. Anna and her caring staff will answer all of your questions, working with you every step of the way and ensuring that you make informed decisions about your future. She can be reached at 231-722-5415, or you can email her at aud@parmenterlaw.com.
Muskegon Area District Library, formerly the Muskegon County Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, offering public library books and magazines, both fiction and nonfiction, to visually and physically impaired individuals. With their new location at 4845 Airline Road, they can be contacted at 231-737-6310.
Benson's Drug Company, the home of Benson's Bottom Paint. offering an expanded grocery selection, Medicare billing, and diabetes management and education. Benson's now features a Kodak machine, which allows customers to edit, copy, and develop their own photos.
Dale White, Chauncey Spencer. This man's name is Coffee, Clarence Coffee. I'm not sure who these two are, but I think I saw something in my research that said that this man was the editor of the Chicago Defender. Those two pilots from Coffey's School of Aeronautics right outside of Chicago in a beat-up biplane, that's two wings, flew to Washington, D.C. and met with civil rights leader Edgar G. Brown, who introduced them to then Senator Harry S. Truman. And after looking at the plane, announced, if you guys guts enough to fly that thing here to Washington from Chicago, I got guts enough to try to get you into CPTP. Shortly after that, Congress authorized the opening of the CPTP to men of color in 6 black colleges and 2 non-academic flying schools. Coffee School was one, and they trained approximately 1,500 pilots. All efforts to enroll in the Army Air Corps was denied to men of color, but intense pressure was brought to bear on the Roosevelt administration, in which men of color was instructed not to sign up for the draft, refused to enlist, joined protests against segregated instruction, and marches. The black press, such as the Pittsburgh Courier, Chicago Defender, and the Amsterdam News, organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, the National Airmen's Associations of America, and other organizations, even members of Congress, like Senators Harry Schwartz of Wyoming, Congressman Powers of New York, Dirksen of Illinois, and others, made personal visits to General H., they call him Hat, Arnold, who was the chief of the Air Corps, and Brigadier General Yost, chief of the training corps, of the training group of the Air Corps, and others in an attempt to include men of color to be trained as pilots. All were stonewalled and ignored. Then when A. Philip Randolph of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Porters announced he had 100,000 protesters ready to arrive in Washington, D.C. to protest the segregated military, got the attention of the Roosevelt administration. And fearing a bloodbath, the president called a meeting. Now, this is the speculation on my part, because you're not going to find this anywhere. Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the First Lady of the United States, a longtime advocate of black causes, and was a close friend to this lady, Mary McLeod Bethune, who was a tireless champion of civil rights, formed the Federal Council on Negro Affairs, the director of National Youth Administration, and I found out recently, was funding the CPTP. She was a member of FDR's Black Cabinet. How many of you in here knew that Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a black cabinet? I'm glad to see some folks, so I'm telling the truth then, right? But she was also the first black female to head a federal agency. Now, it's my speculation that the First Lady, who was a very good friend of Mary, who knew about what was going on with these black men trying to get into pilot training, had a conversation with the lady. And all of us fellas who are married, been with a woman, understand the importance of keeping that woman happy.
Amen.
Franklin is going to do the same thing. And I think that there was great conversation about going on between the two. And when Eleanor Roosevelt arrived at Tuskegee Institute as a member of the Julius Rosenwald Foundation, who had been solicited by Tuskegee Institute to address the enlargement, they wanted to increase the size of their airport because at the present time, they only had room for 3 Piper Cubs. But with the new civilian pilot training program coming into be, they needed more planes because it would take anywhere from a week to a month before a pilot had access to a plane, and they wanted to increase that field. So they implemented a fundraising drive, and the alums were putting money up, but it would take a long time to do it. So Julius Rosenwald Foundation was an organization that they approached to help fund some of that cost. Well, Eleanor Roosevelt was a member of that organization, and they had a meeting in Tuskegee. And this is why I think Eleanor and Mary talked. Mrs. Roosevelt approached Chief Anderson, who was the chief civilian trainer. And she said, I hear you fellas can fly. Now, where'd she hear that from? It had to be from Mary, in my opinion. She got in that Piper Cub. Chief took her up for an hour and came back down. Now, understand this. This was the First Lady of the United States. She had Secret Service with her. When she made her intentions known that she was going to fly with Chief Anderson, a man of color, that ain't supposed to have the cranium capacity to fly a plane, they had a conniption fit. Trust me. Franklin was called. Sir, your wife is trying to get into a plane with one of these fellows down here, and can you talk to her? Franklin said, you think you big enough to stop her? And I'm getting all this from research now. I mean, okay. They said, no, sir, and I think you better let her go. So she flew. Afterwards, the Rosenwald Foundation gave them $175,000 of the $200,000 that they needed. I also think that Ms. Roosevelt, for the same reasons, had inroads with Public Law 7618, which authorized General Hap Arnold in 1940 to create aviation squadrons of men of color as an experiment. 9 non-flying aviation squadrons were created with 250 draftees each commanded exclusively by white officers. Judge William Hastie was appointed civilian aide to the Secretary of War to oversee the implementation of these orders. And after months of stonewalling and complaints and filing protests and talking to folks rather loudly, strongly, Judge Hastie resigned in protest of the squadron's manpower being used as orderlies, street sweepers, and cleaners instead of flight training in an effort to circumvent Public Law 18. President Roosevelt, seeking re-election and eager to court the black votes because he knew he needed them to be re-elected, had this meeting. In the meeting, A. Philip Randolph, president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, T. Arnold Hill, former secretary of the Urban League, and I also found out this young man was also an assistant to Mary McLeod Bethune. You notice that connection in there? Walter White of the NAACP, Navy Secretary Frank Knox. Nope, That's the wrong one. That's the Assistant Secretary of War, R. Patterson. That's the Navy Secretary, Frank Knox. To discuss the equal access of military and fair employment for defense industries in proportion to their numerical strength in the whole population. President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 8802, which opened employment in industries that held defense contracts. December 1940, the Army Air Corps submitted a plan to create an all-black squadron and the units to support it. But the denial of black aviators for training continued until Howard University and CPTP graduate Yancey Williams, backed by the NAACP and Thurgood Marshall, filed suit to compel the Army to admit him as a student pilot. The Army finally relented, setting the plan for an all-black squadron in motion, and the War Department appointed $1 million to build Tuskegee Army Airfield. July 1941, 11 cadets and one black officer who for 4 years had been silenced at the Army Academy, West Point, were inducted into the military aviation training class as 42C. March 42, class 42C graduated with Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., George Spanky Roberts, Mac Ross, Lemieux, Custis.
I've had dozens of people tell me, just cremate me when I die and then throw a big party. I'm sure you've heard someone say that too. I completely get it. Well, I want to help you throw that party. I've got tables and chairs and easels and boards. I've got sound systems and music. I've got caterers and food. And I've got all the people to set it up and break it down when it's all over. So why don't you let us here at Clocks help you with that party so you can focus on what's important, sharing the stories.
Your child's education matters. That's why at Muskegon Public Schools, we encourage early childhood development by providing childcare, preschool, and Head Start. Two-way language immersion and academically focused after-school activities are also an option. High school students benefit from advanced placement classes, nationally recognized athletics and fine arts, and the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. For more information or to enroll, call 720-2000. Muskegon Public Schools, providing the best for every child, every day.
For nearly 9 years, West Michigan Driving Academy has been providing Muskegon County with complete, comprehensive driver's education. Students spend time both in the classroom and on the road in a state-approved driver's education vehicle with state-certified instructors. West Michigan Driving Academy is the only school in Muskegon that offers both day and evening classes throughout the summer. Accident-free with 150 years of combined experience, you will drive safe at West Michigan Driving Academy.
Now, I'm going to pause for just a second and kind of deviate from our papers here because there were two other commanding officers of Tuskegee, and they believed in segregated forces, they believed in the segregated service, and they did everything they could to drop those men from flight training. But when Noel Parrish came on board, he saw it another way. He's from Kentucky. He saw it another way. He saw these men as capable and able and were willing, and he was willing to put his career on the line to make sure that they had an accurate chance to fly. And he was one of the main reasons we have the Tuskegee Airmen today. In April 1943, the 99th Fighter Squadron, consisting of 28 pilots and support personnel, left Brooklyn Navy Yard for Casablanca, Morocco. And upon arrival in North Africa, they were assigned 12th Air Force 33 Fighter Group. The commanding officer, Colonel William Mumyer, was not happy with the Black Squadron and would file reports stating the ineffectiveness of the squadron with no kills or enemy engagement, while keeping them on patrol duty hundreds of miles behind the front line. Now, how you gonna shoot somebody or get involved with that behind? Okay. These reports were used to divert Colonel Davis from his orders. He got orders about 8 months being deployed over in North Africa to come back to Tuskegee to pick up the 332nd Fighter Group. But on his way there, he was diverted. He was told to come to Washington to explain to the Joint Chiefs, how come none of your 99th group is doing anything? They haven't knocked any planes out the air. They haven't destroyed any trucks or anything else. They haven't, there's nothing. They must be scared or something. Well, when Davis got to Washington, D.C., he requested a review. And the review studied all of the P-40 and P-39 squadrons that were doing the same things that they were doing. They weren't the best. The 99th was not the best, but they were far from being the worst. Out of the 5 squadrons that I've seen the report of that were listed in that G3 account, they were right in the middle. They were right in the middle. The study was concluded and the 99th was vindicated. But during this turmoil, the 99th was transferred to the 79th Fighter Group under the command of Colonel Earl Bates. Colonel Bates saw these men as manpower he needed and prepared them in air-to-air combat. So, I'm going to leave that alone, and anybody that's got questions afterwards, we can talk about what that means. The 99th was flying P-40s and P-39s. I got pictures of those, so folks that don't know what they are, we can be on the same page. And if the German planes ever saw one of them coming on their 6, coming in behind them, they just increase their throttle and they just pull away from them. The Allied troops on Anzio Beach in January '44 in Italy during Operation Shingle, in which the 99th Fighter Squadron and the 79th Fighter Group provided air cover. In 2 days, the 99th shot down 13 enemy planes. The Anzio invasion was a success and destroyed the myth that the War College, that the men of color could not fight and would not fight. Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. returned to North Africa with 3 fighter squadrons in February of '44, 100, 301, and 302 fighter squadrons, forming the 332nd Fighter Group. The 99th was immediately assigned to the 332nd Fighter Group, but they didn't join the fighter group until 5 months later, thereby resegregating the United States Army Air Force. And believe me, there were some folks that was upset by that. In March of '44, General Ira Eaker, commanding the Mediterranean Allied Air Force, met with Colonel Davis to solve the unacceptable losses of bomber crews. How many of you saw Red Tails? You remember in that movie the conversation between the commanding officer of the 332nd, who was representing Colonel Davis, and the man asked him, will your people stay with the bombers? Remember that? There's the guy that asked that question. The outcome of that meeting saw the 332nd transferred to the 15th Air Force and outfitted with a P-47 Thunderbolt. The assignment of the Red Tail at that time done by 15th Air Force General T-W-I-N-N-I-N-G, Twining. It wasn't some airman saying, paint that tail red so everybody can see me. No, that's not right. You don't do nothing in the military unless you got everything in quadruplicate, and it's got to be approved from the top down. And those red tails are the same thing. Every one of those squadrons in that fighter wing had something red on their tail. They only had the P-47 Thunderbolt for 1 month. And they came from being transferred from another fighter squadron in the group. So these are war-weary, worn-out planes. But the mechanics got together. They went through those planes. They got those jokers flyable, and they flew missions in those planes. The P-51 BC Mustang replaced the 47. Getting ahead of myself here. The P-51 BC Mustang replaced the P-47 after 1 month. Colonel Davis made it clear to his command, our job is to protect the bombers and not look for glory. Any pilot who leaves his bombers to chase enemy planes will be subject to court-martial. Because the Luftwaffe had developed a technique that they would send in a few fighters to pull off the covers, the cover fighters. They were decoys. And while the fighters were out chasing those decoys, the Germans would come in and attack the bombers. And Eaker knew this, told Davis this, and Davis made absolutely sure his men understood. And I've talked to several of them, and when you see those guys respond when they're asked that question, you know there was no play involved. The 332nd won 1 Legion of Merit, 1 Silver Star, 2 Soldier Medals, 8 Purple Hearts, 150 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 14 Bronze Stars, 714 Air Medals with clusters. They flew 1,578 missions, 15,533 sorties. They lost 66 pilots. They destroyed or damaged 136 planes in the air, 273 on the ground, and they sunk 1 destroyer. So truly, the War College was an error.
Established in 1973 by Paul M. Lattis, Lattis & Hoops Law Offices has been a multi-service law firm specializing in accident cases, personal injury, wrongful death, Social Security disability, divorce, probate and wills, and real estate. When it comes to choosing the right attorney for your legal needs, don't choose out of town, choose local legal counsel. It really pays. It's experience when it counts. It's Lattis & Hoops Law Offices.
Culver's Concrete Mixers, the creamiest way to eat a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. We put as much care into our fresh frozen custard as Reese's puts into its peanut butter cups. Not only do we use family farm fresh dairy, we also use the best vanilla and cocoa beans. Handcrafting each concrete mixer, it creates a perfect blend. Which brings us back to this, the creamiest way to eat a Reese's. Put the spoon in straight and tall, you've got a perfect concrete mixer. Welcome to Delicious.
Appliance shopping can be confusing. At Seaway Appliance, we make it easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, we have a great selection of home appliances to choose from, and we offer competitive pricing.
2, the staff is friendly and knowledgeable, and our customers can enjoy a no-pressure experience.
3, we have our own professional service department.
Plus, because we're a brand source store, you know you're getting the best deal possible, saving you money.
Where are you going to shop for your next appliance or TV? Seaway Appliance. Thank you for your business.
Seaway Appliance.
This is the P-39 Air Cobra. It was slow. It didn't have heaters in the gun, so if it got over 10,000 feet, the guns would freeze. If it got over 10,000 feet, the pilots would pass out because they didn't have oxygen either. They were good for supporting ground troops because they had a big 37 millimeter cannon in the nose. And talking to Alexander Jefferson, who flew one, he mentioned the fact that this cannon had a very, shall we say, nervous trait about it. Because when that cannon fired, the recoil would come right between his legs. And he said, every time I fire that thing, I pray that nothing breaks. The P-40, it was used by the Flying Tigers in China in the late 30s. It was more nimble than the 39, but it still had limitations compared to the German aircraft. It had a top speed of 360 miles an hour and a range of 650 miles. It was used by the 332nd during Operation Shingle, the Anzio beachhead, as I mentioned before. The P-47 was the first airplane the 332nd was issued that had comparable characteristics to the enemy. It was big, strong, stable gun platform, and was comparable to German planes. Now, there was a white squadron, and I believe it was England, who was scheduled to get the P-51. They refused the P-51 to keep the P-47. They kept the P-47 because you could tear into that plane and it would still fly. There's a story on the War Channel, on the military channel on TV, about a pilot who was attacked by German Luftwaffe. He was tail end Charlie. His plane caught on fire. He fought it, got the fire out, and started to fly. And he was coming home because he was wounded. Blood was on the inside of the canopy. He couldn't see out. He was losing oil. And a German ace got on his tail and emptied his guns into that plane, and that plane brought that pilot home. That's why they refused anything but that tank. That's what it was, the flying tank. P-51B, C, D. The B was made in California. The C was made in Texas. You don't know which is which until you get the paperwork, because they were the exact plane. The D had a bubble top. See that? See this here? That was a bubble top. You can look around you. You can see behind you. The BC was what they call a razorback. The rear was obstructed. Your 6 was obstructed. So a lot of the guys had a mirror up here so that they could see what was behind them. So those are the differences between this particular plane had 6 50 calibers and the BC had 4 50 calibers. The other transition was this little flip here to help stabilize it. There's a lot more about that airplane I can talk about, but I'm not going to get into that. But it was the pilot's plane. It was the sports car of the aircraft, and it protected the bombers, and it fought off the best that the Germans could put together. Planes like the Messerschmitt 109, the Focke-Wulf 190, and the ME-262 jet, which was the world's first fighter jet. Wasco Brown, which is this man right here, killed a ME-262. He got his D from Lucky Lester. Uh-oh, I messed up. Now, Lucky Lester shot down 3 enemy planes in 15 minutes. This is a painting of that event. This is a problem that I have with it. The plane that is shown here is a P-51D. Lucky Lester shot down those German planes in a BC. Okay? It wasn't a D. But this is where the research comes in. Why did he do this? He did this because this is a better looking plane. This is a painting. Okay? They're like movies are just movies. They're for entertainment. There's no truth in either one of the 2 Red Tails, Tuskegee Airmen that the HBO put on. There's very little truth in all of it. But it brought to the attention that those men existed, that those men did things, and I'm here to set the record straight. Okay? I'm here to let you know the truth. But it's fine. You know, Lucky Lester came out of this. He finished his missions. I think he had about 120 missions. You're only supposed to have 50, but because they didn't have replacement pilots, black folks had to do a lot more. Each squadron had distinctive markings. The 99th had a band of blue and white diamonds on the nose with blue trim tabs, and the letter A with 1 star, the letter A with a number, then the star and bar, and then another number, and that was the only squadron that had that. See what we got here. Yeah, that's one of them. This particular plane, I made a model of it for Claire Chandler from Allegan. I don't know if anybody knows him, but he was a young man that I met, and it was his wife that made me an honorary airman. This is the letter with a number, the star and bar, and then another number. This being a P-40, it was in early stages just before the bars came out. This is 100. Right there. That flare with the black trim tabs. That's 100. This is the 301. This particular plane was the plane that Alexander Jefferson was shot down in over France. White trim tabs. Just a straight bar here. And this is the 302 squadron. Yellow and red stripes, yellow trim tabs. And this yellow stripe was way out on the wing. The rest of them were 18 inches from the fuselage. And each squadron had its own distinct patch that was approved by the military. I have a plaque in the back with those patches, with the numbers of each one of them. There's also a group that never left the United States. That's the bomber group, the 477th Bomber Group. They never left the United States, but they flew back and forth in B-25s. I have their squadrons, and I have their group patch. The group patch was never, they didn't have enough time to approve it, but most of the guys believed that that particular patch was in the final stages for approval. This is a German plane. This is a 190. This is a 109, and that's the German jet. I've met these gentlemen, and all of them have the same attitude. They had a job to do. They protected their country. It's my intent to have every one of them that I've met with their planes in my possession. I've got this man, who is Lee Archer, who has passed on. He was the only ace that we had. And in the beginning, you saw that white display where it says, if you want something to fail, you have to put failures in it. This is the man that made that statement. This is Harry Stewart. Harry Stewart shot down 3 German planes, and in 1949 was part of the crew that won the first Top Gun trophy that happened to be lost for 40, 50 years. But the record of these Americans, this is Colonel Alexander Jefferson, who was shot down over France. He was a POW for 15 to 18 months. Charles McGee still holds the record of 408 missions, still holds the record from the Air Force. He fought in 3 wars: World War II, Korea, Vietnam. 408 missions. That's a lot of flying. Different planes. And he's still spry. Oh, that was one of the displays I put on. The record of these Americans were outstanding, however it's measured. The men of the 99th, 100th, 301, and 302 squadrons performed brilliantly despite being trained under difficult circumstances in a Jim Crow atmosphere. Additionally, dreams, hopes, desires, perseverance, not allowing anyone to define you or stop your dreams, knowing what is right and willing to pay the price, whatever the cost. America is a different place since 1939, and it is better for it. And it's because of these fellas that we are where we are today. Thank you.